They thought she was nobody, a quiet girl who cleaned their offices and served their coffee. So when Mrs. Wellington fired her without warning, she never imagined that within 48 hours her billionaire husband would own everything she held dear. Maya Chen had perfected the art of being invisible. At 26, she moved through the gleaming halls of prestige marketing like a ghost, her cleaning cart squeaking softly against marble floors that cost more than most people's annual salary. The irony wasn't lost on her that she spent her days polishing the empire her husband had quietly purchased 6 months ago, though no one at the company knew this detail. The decision to work incognito hadn't been easy. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. When David Chen, tech mogul and founder of $3 billion companies, suggested she take time to travel or pursue her art, Maya chose something different. She wanted to understand the world of business from the ground up, to see how the other half lived, and perhaps most importantly, to prove to herself that she could make it on her own merit. So Maya Chen became Maya Rodriguez, using her mother's maiden name and a fake address. She applied for the most humble position available at one of the city's most prestigious marketing firms, and somehow, watching people ignore her existence felt like exactly what she needed. Prestige marketing occupied the top 15 floors of the Meridian Tower downtown. Maya's days began at 5 in the morning, arriving before the executives to ensure their world appeared flawless when they stepped off their private elevators. She emptied trash bins filled with contracts worth millions, wiped down conference tables where deals that shaped industries were struck, and quietly observed a corporate culture that would have fascinated any sociologist. The company hierarchy was rigid and unforgiving. At the bottom were people like Maya, the cleaners and maintenance staff who kept the machine running but remained essentially invisible. Above them were the administrative assistants, receptionists, and junior associates who scrambled to prove their worth. The middle management tier comprised account managers and department heads who lived in constant fear of the next quarterly review, and at the very top sat the senior partners, led by Victoria Wellington herself. Victoria Wellington was everything Maya had expected from a woman who'd clawed her way to the top of a male-dominated industry. Tall, impeccably dressed, and sharp-tongued, she commanded respect through fear rather than admiration. Her corner office overlooked the city's financial district, and she ruled her domain with an iron fist wrapped in designer gloves. Maya had been working at Prestige for 3 months when she first witnessed Victoria's management style firsthand. It was a Tuesday morning, and Maya was emptying the trash in the main conference room when raised voices echoed from Victoria's office next door. "I don't care if her grandmother died," Victoria's voice cut through the thick walls. "The Peterson presentation is due tomorrow, and if Sarah thinks personal problems excuse professional failures, she's more naive than I thought." Through the slightly open door, Maya could see Sarah Mitchell, a young account coordinator with promising talent, standing with tears streaming down her face. Sarah had been working 60-hour weeks for months, and Maya had noticed the exhaustion written across her features during their brief encounters in the break room. "Please, Mrs. Wellington," Sarah pleaded, "I just need one more day. The funeral is this afternoon, and I promise I'll have everything ready by Thursday morning." Victoria's laugh held no warmth. "Thursday morning? Sarah darling, this isn't a chair. We have clients paying premium rates for premium service. If you can't handle the pressure, perhaps you should consider a different career path." Maya watched Sarah leave the office, shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. That afternoon, while Sarah attended her grandmother's funeral, Victoria assigned the Peterson account to someone else and had HR begin the paperwork for Sarah's termination, citing inability to meet deadlines as the official reason. This pattern repeated itself with disturbing regularity. Victoria seemed to take particular pleasure in targeting employees she perceived as weak or vulnerable. Young mothers who needed flexible schedules found their hours cut or their responsibilities reduced until they had no choice but to resign. Older employees discovered their experience was suddenly considered outdated, their decades of knowledge dismissed in favor of cheaper, younger replacements. Maya documented everything she witnessed, not out of any grand plan for justice, but because the anthropologist in her was fascinated by this toxic ecosystem. She kept detailed notes in a small journal she carried everywhere, recording conversations, decisions, and the human cost of Victoria's leadership style. The company's success couldn't be denied. Prestige Marketing had landed 3 major international accounts in the past year alone, and their profit margins were the envy of competitors. But Maya began to understand that this success came at the expense of human decency, built on a foundation of fear and exploitation that her husband would have found reprehensible. David called every evening, his voice warm with concern. "How was your day, sweetheart?" He'd ask, and Maya would share carefully edited versions of her experiences, leaving out the worst of what she witnessed. She wasn't ready to explain why she stayed, why she felt compelled to continue this strange experiment in anonymous existence. The truth was, Maya had grown up with privilege. Her father was a successful surgeon, her mother a federal judge. She'd attended private schools, graduated from an Ivy League university, and married into even greater wealth. She'd never experienced what it felt like to be powerless, to have her livelihood dependent on the whims of someone who viewed her as expendable. Working as Maya Rodriguez opened her eyes to a reality she'd been sheltered from her entire life. She watched single mothers choose between attending their children's school events and keeping their jobs. She saw talented individuals passed over for promotions because they didn't fit the company's unspoken image requirements. She witnessed the daily humiliations that people endured simply to survive in an economy that offered them few alternatives. But it wasn't just the systemic issues that troubled Maya, it was the casual cruelty, the way Victoria seemed to enjoy wielding power over those who couldn't fight back. Maya had seen enough wealthy, successful people to know that wealth didn't automatically create monsters. Her husband commanded respect through integrity and fairness. Her parents had built their careers on competence and compassion. Victoria Wellington represented something different, something darker. She was what happened when ambition consumed empathy, when success became more important than the humanity of those who helped create it. Maya's moment of reckoning came on a Thursday evening in November. She was cleaning the executive floor, later than usual because she'd stopped to help Elena Vasquez, one of the night security guards, whose English wasn't strong enough to understand the new electronic timesheet system. Maya had spent 30 minutes walking Elena through the process, knowing that confusion about the system had already cost 2 other employees their jobs.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
As Maya pushed her cart past Victoria's office, she noticed the lights still on and the door slightly ajar. Victoria was inside with 2 other senior partners, glasses of expensive wine in hand as they celebrated landing the Morrison Industries account, a deal worth 8 figures annually. To another successful quarter, Victoria toasted and Maya paused despite herself when she heard her own fake name mentioned in the conversation that followed. Speaking of cutting costs, Victoria continued, "I've been reviewing our service contracts. We're spending too much on cleaning staff. That Rodriguez girl, for instance, I've been watching her and she's slow, takes too long in each office, probably stealing time." Maya's blood ran cold. She wasn't slow, she was thorough. She took pride in her work, ensuring every surface gleamed and every trash bin was properly sanitized. But she realized that excellence meant nothing when someone was determined to find fault. "She's also been talking to other staff members during work hours," Victoria added, referring to Maya's assistance with Elena and her habit of offering encouragement to struggling employees. "Unprofessional behavior. I think it's time to make some changes." The conversation continued, but Maya had heard enough. She finished her route mechanically, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd overheard. Victoria wasn't just planning to fire her, she was building a case to justify it, twisting Maya's genuine care for her colleagues into evidence of poor performance. That night Maya sat in her modest apartment, staring at her phone. She could call David, explain everything, and have Victoria Wellington removed from her position before morning. One phone call would end this charade and deliver the justice that Maya's firing would represent. But something held her back. Perhaps it was pride, or maybe it was the recognition that running to her husband's wealth and power would validate every assumption people made about privileged women who never faced real consequences. Maya had started this journey to prove something to herself, and ending it by wielding inherited power felt like admitting defeat. Instead, she decided to see how far Victoria would go. She would let the fire experience the full weight of powerlessness that so many people faced every day. Only then would she reveal the truth, but not to save herself. She would reveal it to save everyone else who worked under Victoria Wellington's regime of fear. The next morning brought an unusual energy to the prestige offices. Word had spread about the Morrison Industries deal, and there was talk of bonuses, promotions, and expansion. Maya noticed Victoria's particularly smug expression as she swept through the halls, acknowledging congratulations with the gracious smile of someone who believed her own mythology. Maya went about her duties with extra care that day, knowing they might be her last. She helped train the new janitor who would likely replace her, left detailed notes about the specific preferences of different executives, and made sure all her equipment was properly maintained and organized. At exactly 4:30 p.m., as Maya was preparing to finish her shift, Victoria's assistant approached her with the summons Maya had been expecting. "Mrs. Wellington wants to see you in her office immediately," the young woman said, her expression sympathetic but distant. In the corporate world, associating too closely with someone about to be terminated could be career suicide. Maya knocked on Victoria's door and entered to find not just Victoria, but also HR Director James Morrison and Security Chief Rick Torres. The presence of security sent a clear message about how this meeting was expected to conclude. Victoria didn't invite Maya to sit. Instead, she stood behind her imposing desk, arms crossed, her expression a perfect mask of professional displeasure. "Maya Rodriguez," Victoria began, her voice crisp with authority, "we need to discuss some concerns about your performance and conduct." Maya stood perfectly still as Victoria's accusations filled the room. The charges were predictable yet meticulously crafted. Time theft, fraternizing with other employees during work hours, failure to maintain professional boundaries, each accusation delivered with surgical precision by a woman who had clearly perfected the art of character assassination. Furthermore, Victoria continued, her manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany desk, "We have security footage of you accessing it. Areas beyond your assigned cleaning zones, the executive conference room on the 14th floor, specifically." Maya remained silent, knowing that anything she said would be twisted into further evidence of misconduct. The truth was, she had cleaned that conference room because the regular janitor had called in sick, and she had volunteered to cover the additional area. But explaining would only give Victoria more ammunition. Given the severity of these infractions, Victoria declared, "Prestige Marketing is terminating your employment effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and your final paycheck, minus deductions for company property damage, will be mailed to your address." The property damage was a fabrication. Maya had never broken anything, but she understood the game now. Victoria wanted her to leave not just jobless, but humiliated and financially penalized. It was a masterclass in institutional cruelty. Security Chief Torres stepped forward, his expression apologetic but firm. "Maya, I'll need your building access card and any company keys." Maya handed over her credentials without protest. As she was escorted through the halls she had cleaned for months, she noticed the carefully averted gazes of her former colleagues. Some looked genuinely sorry, others relieved that the axe had fallen on someone else. A few seemed to enjoy the spectacle. The elevator ride down felt endless. Maya stood between two security guards, watching the floor numbers decrease, each one marking another step away from the world she had inhabited for months. When the doors finally opened to the lobby, she walked out with her head high, carrying only a small bag containing her personal items. Outside, the November wind cut through her thin jacket. Maya stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the towering glass structure that housed Prestige Marketing, and for the first time in months, she smiled. The experiment was over. The real work was about to begin. Maya pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. "David," she said when her husband answered, "I need to tell you something." 3 hours later, Maya sat in the study of their penthouse apartment, watching David pace back and forth as she recounted the events of the past 4 months. His expression shifted from confusion to concern to barely controlled anger as the full scope of her story unfolded. "You worked as a janitor," David said, his voice carefully controlled, "for 4 months, at a company I own." Maya nodded. "I wanted to understand how business really works from the bottom up, and I learned more than I ever expected." David stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Maya, do you realize what you've put yourself through? What you've put me through, worrying about why you seem so tired and stressed all the time?" "I'm sorry for the deception," Maya said, "but I needed to do this alone. I needed to know I could survive on my own merit, without your name or your money protecting me." David's expression softened slightly. "And what did you learn?" Maya opened her journal and began reading. She shared Victoria's treatment of Sarah Mitchell, the systematic targeting of vulnerable employees, the culture of fear that permeated every level of the organization. She detailed the wage theft disguised as deductions, the illegal overtime policies, and the discriminatory practices that had driven away dozens of talented workers. As Maya spoke, David's business acumen kicked in. He understood immediately that Victoria Wellington wasn't just a cruel manager, she was a liability. Her practices exposed the company to lawsuits, regulatory violations, and the kind of public relations disasters that could destroy a brand overnight. "How did I not know about this?" David asked, running his hands through his hair. "I have people who are supposed to monitor these things, because people like Victoria are experts at managing up," Maya explained. "She shows one face to the board and investors and another to the people who can't fight back. The numbers look good on paper, but the human cost is devastating. David was quiet for a long moment, processing everything his wife had told him. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the steel that had made him one of the most feared negotiators in Silicon Valley. "What do you want me to do about it?" Maya had been thinking about this question all afternoon. "I want you to visit the office tomorrow morning, not as the owner conducting a surprise inspection, but as a potential client evaluating whether to hire prestige marketing for a major campaign." David raised an eyebrow. "And then, you'll see exactly what I saw. How she treats people she thinks don't matter. How the company really operates when no one important is watching." The next morning, Maya watched from a coffee shop across the street as David's unmarked sedan pulled up to the Meridian Tower. He was dressed down for the occasion, wearing an off-the-rack suit and carrying a worn briefcase that made him look like any other mid-level executive seeking marketing services. Maya had coached him on the performance. He would present himself as David Chang, representing a fictional tech startup looking for help with a product launch. The name was close enough to his real one that he wouldn't hesitate when introducing himself, but generic enough not to trigger recognition. From her vantage point, Maya could see the prestige marketing reception area through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She watched David check in with the receptionist, then settle into one of the waiting area chairs to observe the morning routine. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from David 20 minutes later. "You weren't exaggerating. Just watched the Wellington woman publicly humiliate a junior associate for bringing her the wrong coffee order. In front of clients." The meeting with Victoria was scheduled for 10 o'clock, giving David time to witness the morning staff interactions that Maya had described. He positioned himself strategically in the reception area, pretending to review documents while actually observing the corporate culture in action. At 9:45, David texted again. "Maintenance worker just spilled coffee in the hallway. Accident clearly." Wellington screamed at him for 5 minutes, threatened to have him fired, made him clean it with his own shirt. Other executives stood by watching, disgusting. Maya's chest tightened as she read the message. She knew the maintenance worker David was describing. Roberto had 3 young children, and was working 2 jobs to support his family. He was also one of the kindest people Maya had met during her time at Prestige. At exactly 10 o'clock, David was escorted to Victoria's office for their meeting. Maya knew he would be recording everything legally, using the high-tech equipment built into his briefcase and watch. What Victoria didn't know was that she was about to audition for the role of unemployed executive. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. During that time, Maya received periodic updates from David, each message confirming her worst impressions of Victoria's character. The woman was charming and professional when she thought she was dealing with a potential client, but every few minutes, she would casually disparage her own employees or make comments that revealed her toxic management philosophy. "She just told me that good employees don't need work-life balance," David texted. "Said the ones who complain about long hours are the ones you need to prune from the tree." Direct quote. When the meeting concluded, David texted a single word: "Enough." Maya's phone rang 30 seconds later. "I've seen all I need to see," David said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "That woman is a cancer, and I'm removing her today." "How?" Emergency board meeting. Noon. "I'm invoking my rights as majority shareholder to call for immediate leadership changes due to concerns about legal liability and brand reputation." Maya felt a surge of anticipation mixed with something that might have been sympathy. Victoria had no idea what was coming. In 2 hours her world would collapse as suddenly and completely as she had collapsed the worlds of so many others. The board meeting convened in Prestige Marketing's largest conference room, the same space where Maya had emptied countless trash cans and polished the enormous oval table that now seated 12 of the city's most powerful business leaders. Victoria entered the room with her usual confidence, dressed in a sharp navy suit that probably cost more than Roberto made in a month. She had spent the morning celebrating what she believed was another successful client presentation, already planning how to leverage the fictional account into her next promotion. David was the last to arrive, and when he entered, Maya could see through the live stream on her laptop that Victoria's expression didn't change. She still saw David Chang, potential client, not David Chen, her ultimate employer. "Ladies and gentlemen," David announced, setting his briefcase on the table with deliberate precision, "thank you for gathering on such short notice. I called this meeting because of serious concerns about the leadership and culture of this organization." Victoria's smile faltered slightly, confusion flickering across her features. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, unsure why a potential client had been allowed into their meeting. "I'm sorry," Victoria interjected, "but I think there's been some confusion. Mr. Chang, while we appreciate your interest in our services, this is a private board meeting." David smiled, and Maya recognized the expression from their early dating days when he would reveal surprise romantic gestures. "Actually, Miss Wellington, there's no confusion. Allow me to properly introduce myself." He opened his briefcase and removed a stack of legal documents, distributing them around the table with practiced efficiency. "I'm David Chen, founder and CEO of Chen Dynamics, and as of 6 months ago, majority owner of Prestige Marketing through CM Holdings." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine, landing on a combination of horror and desperate calculation. The other board members stared at the documents in front of them, trying to process the implications of what they were seeing. "The gentleman you met with this morning," David continued, his voice steady and professional, "was conducting what I call a cultural audit. I wanted to see how this company operates when no one thinks the owner is watching." Victoria found her voice, though it came out smaller than usual. "Mr. Chen, I can assure you that any isolated incidents you may have witnessed don't represent our overall culture. We maintain the highest standards of professionalism." David pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. "Would you like to hear some recordings from our meeting? Perhaps the part where you described your employees as deadweight that needs to be cut loose, or when you laughed about making that maintenance worker clean up his accident with his own clothing." The color drained from Victoria's face. Around the table, board members avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their hands or the documents in front of them. "Furthermore," David continued, "my wife has compiled extensive documentation of workplace harassment, discriminatory practices, and potential labor law violations that have occurred under your leadership." Victoria's head snapped up. "Your wife?" David smiled, and Maya could see him savoring this moment. "Maya Rodriguez, though you might know her better as the janitor you fired yesterday for the crime of being thorough and caring about her work." The revelation hit Victoria like a physical blow. Maya watched through the live stream as comprehension dawned, followed by the crushing realization of how completely she had been outmaneuvered. "That's impossible," Victoria whispered. "She was just a cleaning woman. I checked her background, her references, all legitimate," David confirmed. "My wife wanted to understand business from the ground up, so she took a job here under her maiden name. For 4 months, she worked honestly and diligently, while you created a hostile work environment that violated both company policy and federal law." David stood, commanding the room's attention. "Effective immediately, Victoria Wellington is terminated for cause. Her severance package is void, due to the documented policy violations and potential legal exposure she has created for this company." Victoria tried to speak, but David wasn't finished. "Security will escort you from the building. Your personal items will be shipped to your home address. Any attempt to contact current or former employees, access company systems, or interfere with our investigation will result in legal action." As if summoned by magic, Rick Torres appeared in the conference room doorway. Maya almost laughed at the poetic justice of the security chief who had escorted her out yesterday, now preparing to do the same to Victoria. Victoria stood on shaking legs, her composure finally cracking. "You can't do this. I've given everything to this company. I've made you millions." David's expression remained impassive. "You've made money at the expense of human dignity. That's not a trade this company will make anymore." As Victoria was led from the room, she turned back one last time. "That little cleaning girl destroyed me," she said, her voice venomous with rage. "I hope you're happy." David waited until the door closed before responding, though Victoria was no longer there to hear it. "My wife didn't destroy you, Miss Wellington. She simply revealed who you already were." That evening Maya stood in the same conference room where she had been fired, but this time she wore a tailored business suit and sat at the head of the table. David had offered her Victoria's position, but Maya had declined. Instead, she had accepted the newly created role of Director of Corporate Culture and Employee Relations. Her first official act was to reinstate every employee Victoria had wrongfully terminated, including Sarah Mitchell, who broke down crying when Maya called her personally with the news. Her second was to implement anonymous reporting systems and regular cultural audits to ensure that what happened under Victoria's leadership could never happen again. Roberto, the maintenance worker Victoria had humiliated, was promoted to facilities manager with a substantial raise. Elena Vasquez, The security guard Maya had helped with the timesheet system was enrolled in an English language program paid for by the company. As Maya reviewed the employee files spread across the conference table, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had entered prestige marketing as Maya Rodriguez, invisible and powerless. She was leaving as Maya Chen, armed with the knowledge and authority to create lasting change. Her phone buzzed with a text from David, who was at home preparing dinner. "How does it feel to be the boss?" Maya smiled as she typed her response. "Like I finally understand what power is really for." The next morning, Maya arrived at Prestige Marketing through the main entrance, her employee badge reading Director Chen, instead of the temporary visitor passes she had grown accustomed to. The lobby felt different now, not because anything had physically changed, but because her perspective had shifted entirely. Word of Victoria's dramatic departure had spread through the building overnight, along with rumors about the new ownership and the mysterious connection to the fired cleaning woman. Maya could feel the curious glances as she made her way to the elevator, but this time people were looking at her with recognition rather than looking through her. Her new office was on the executive floor, 3 doors down from where she used to empty trash cans. Maya had insisted on keeping it modest, decorated with photos from her months working alongside the staff she now helped oversee. The images served as daily reminders of why she was there and whose interests she was meant to protect. Maya's first week in her new role was a whirlwind of meetings, policy reviews, and one-on-one conversations with employees who were still processing the seismic changes at their company. Many approached her with stories they had never dared tell before, accounts of Victoria's cruelty that made Maya's own experiences seem mild by comparison. The transformation wasn't immediate, and it wasn't without challenges. Some managers who had thrived under Victoria's regime struggled to adapt to an environment that valued collaboration over intimidation. A few chose to leave rather than change, which Maya considered a positive outcome, but the successes far outweighed the difficulties. Employee satisfaction scores soared, productivity increased as people no longer spent their energy navigating a toxic workplace. Client relationships improved as the company's reputation for integrity grew alongside its reputation for results. 6 months later, Maya stood before a packed auditorium at the annual company meeting, looking out at faces that now regarded her as a leader rather than furniture. She had been invited to speak about corporate culture and leadership, topics she never could have addressed with authority before her journey to the bottom of the organizational chart. True leadership, Maya told the audience, isn't about commanding respect through fear. It's about earning respect through service to others. It's about understanding that the person emptying your trash can or serving your coffee has dreams, struggles, and dignity that deserve recognition. After her speech, a young intern approached Maya in the hallway. She was nervous but determined, clutching a portfolio of design work she hoped to show someone in the creative department. "Miss Chen," the intern said, "I wanted to thank you for everything you've done here. Before you came, people like me were invisible. Now I feel like my ideas actually matter." Maya smiled, remembering her own feelings of invisibility just months earlier. "They always mattered," she replied. "Sometimes we just need the right person to help us see that." As Maya watched the intern walk away with renewed confidence, she understood that her greatest accomplishment wasn't the policy changes or the improved workplace culture. It was the knowledge that she had helped other people find their voices in a world that often tried to silence them. Victoria Wellington had seen Maya as nothing more than an obstacle to remove. In trying to destroy someone she considered powerless, Victoria had instead revealed the full extent of her own moral bankruptcy. The woman who had wielded authority like a weapon discovered too late that real power comes not from what you can take away from others, but from what you can help them build. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from David. "Dinner at 7, I made reservations at that little place you love." Maya smiled as she gathered her things, ready to end another day at the office and return to the man who had supported her through every step of this unlikely journey. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to make prestige marketing a place where everyone could thrive regardless of their position on the organizational chart. But tonight, she would celebrate the simple joy of a job well done and a lesson learned by everyone who witnessed the rise and fall of Victoria Wellington. In business, as in life, how you treat people when you think no one is watching reveals everything about who you really are. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.